Now, I mean, you may have thought Twitter was just a social media company run by some bearded ethereal pothead in downtown San Francisco, but not anymore. While you were sleeping, Twitter got bigger than you ever imagined it could.
This only has to do with Twitter trying to silence its critics and protect its interests. Twitter doesn't care about the safety of the American people. The full comprehensive list of things that Twitter cares about are its money and its power.
Which only proves that the tech monopolies are even worse than we thought they were. Not only are they cruelly authoritarian and totally dishonest, as well as limitlessly ambitious, but they are also, and we didn't know this, childishly stupid. They have no idea how they appear to others. They can't see themselves. They lack even a glimmer of the ironic self-awareness that is a prerequisite for wisdom. They are idiots. They don't even get their own jokes. On the other hand, none of this is really very funny. It's terrifying. We don't need to convince you of that. You have seen the crackdown and the censorship all week long. And you sense all of it is going to get worse, and you're right about that. It is going to get worse.
What do you make of this very bizarre moment that we're in terms of the information war, not even the specific political, Trump's got the 10 days left war?
Yeah, well, it's all it's the fourth stage of a psyop. And the first stage was the COVID, the second stage was Antifa, the demoralization, disorientation, then the election, whatever happened there, we won't comment on it. But the last stage is normalization. So they have to control the media and normalize everyone's belief in this election. And if you doubt it, everyone's going to treat you like you're crazy to doubt this election. So this is really the fourth and final stage of a psyop, where I think they take over the United States, frankly. So that's why this is so crucial for them.
Only the Democratic side, only the left of American politics, only the Marxists want an actual tyrannical state whereby you have unelected people. They could be bureaucrats, they could be corporate CEOs, select what speech is allowed and which isn't, and what isn't. And that we should know, we do know, we have known for some time. What we didn't quite understand, I suppose, are two things. Number one, that the Trump administration wouldn't go quickly enough with the Section 230 reforms and other big tech reforms that we needed to see play out. And number two, that conservatives would just take this all lying down. Now, I'm pleased to say that clearly they're not. Clearly people are innovating. Clearly people are creating. Clearly people are disintermediating their way around the censorship. And I actually think in the long run, these sorts of antediluvian measures can be a good thing for conservatives because it forces us out of our armchairs.
That's also why it's so wonderful that sites like Locals are springing up and are going to provide an alternative. Nature abhors a vacuum. Markets abhor a vacuum. I love if these Twitter guys and YouTube are going to play the game the way they want to. There's about 47% of Americans who want to hear dissident voices and who will be really tuning in.
Democrats are now telling you that censorship is absolutely necessary to protect you. And their donors in big tech are happy to oblige. There's a lot of violent rhetoric they're not censoring, though, and that's kind of weird. David Marcus of the Federalists, works out of New York, has an amazing piece today in the New York Post describing all the things they're not censoring, and it makes you wonder why. Dave Marcus joins us tonight to explain. Dave, thanks so much for coming on. So what did you find?
Well, Twitter claims that it has to censor conservative voices and ban President Trump because they're in violation of their safety guidelines. So I did about a 10-minute search of Twitter's own platform and found hashtags like kill Trump, assassinate Trump. I found a user whose current name is pigs in a blanket fry 'em like bacon, a reference to killing police.
Speaking of hypocrisy, take a look at Tucker's take on Twitter's latest tweet. They have what amounts to a foreign policy team that regulates the communication and affairs of countries abroad.
So Twitter's global public policy team is really the company's own NSC. So the global public policy people weighed in today, as security councils do, on the upcoming elections in Uganda. And here's what they said about those elections. Quote, ahead of the Ugandan election, we're hearing reports that internet service providers are being ordered to block social media and messaging apps. We strongly condemn internet shutdowns. They are hugely harmful, violate basic human rights and the principles of the hashtag Open Internet. Access to information and freedom of expression, including the public conversation on Twitter, is never more important than during the democratic processes, particularly elections. End quote. So marinate in that a bit. Just let it sink in. Twitter is reminding the Ugandan people that censorship is immoral. Sorry, Ugandans, you're not allowed to silence other people's Twitter accounts, especially in the run-up to an election. You just can't do that.
They were supposed to have systems that could stand up to this, and we're watching the systems just collapse. What do you make of what the government either should have done or could have done or would have done in all of the time that it had to break these companies up or regulate them or the rest of it? I never felt there was a good answer. You know me, I like competition. That's why I started Locals. But do you think Trump dropped the ball in terms of there was a time where maybe some of this could have been dealt with?
Yes, but I think that the goons have gone to steps that I doubt even Trump anticipated, that they were going to do things like shut off Twitter. What they have done is so extreme that it's really left a bad taste in the mouth of anyone but the most crazy Marxist lefties. It's clearly they are showing their hand and showing America what the America is that you have to look forward to in about a week if this all goes through as planned.
But nevertheless, they continued to change the rules. From November the 3rd onwards, they continued to change the goalposts and continued to change the rules. What they would do is send us an email that would end up somewhere in my stack of 1,500 emails I get every day and say, right, if you now do not do this, you will then be kicked off. So it was almost like it was created intentionally to kick organizations like the War Room off YouTube. And surely enough, over the course of the last couple of days, they kicked us off. And when I went back to these people who are supposed to be, I suppose, conservative handlers on behalf of Google, they don't now even respond. They will not even reply to questions as to why we were kicked off.
It reminds me, it's communist China. That's what they do over there. How concerned are you that big tech, in this case, YouTube, owned by Google, Facebook, Twitter, they seem to only want to censor one way, don't they?
Well, of course. I mean, of course they only want to censor one way because only one way wants to give them their way.
This only has to do with Twitter trying to silence its critics and protect its interests. Twitter doesn't care about the safety of the American people. The full comprehensive list of things that Twitter cares about are its money and its power.
What's so funny, though, is this has been such a successful tactic in pushing professional conservatives, the ones who are supposed to be defending us, back on their heels. You can't believe what's on Parler. It's a cesspool of violence and filth. And they're like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to defend that. Nobody says what you're saying, which is, please, it's the internet. There's a lot of garbage out there. Doesn't mean you should censor people.
No, absolutely. And the monopolistic banning of Parler is really troublesome. This is so much worse than any monopoly that we've seen before. I mean, railroad barons and Ma Bell didn't have a dark dystopian vision of the future in which people were locked in their houses staring at screens while machines went brr and brought them everything that they needed. And if that sounds familiar, it's because we just had a dress rehearsal of it. And what the big tech oligarchs learned is that a frightening number of the American people will simply sit down and take it. And why? Well, because of safety.